Welcome back to the Socialist Report. We have this article here from People's Dispatch. Kwesi Pratt Jr. Nobody believes the International Monetary Fund deal will solve Ghana's crisis. Now, no, the People's Dispatch has a video on this. Got notified earlier today. Make sure you subscribe to their channel. But we're just going to read the article from their article is not very long at all, so we might just watch the video. Let's go to YouTube and watch it. This may take a second for me. Change the quality, make sure that it's picking up the noise on the. It's not picking up the noise. I don't know why it's not, but desktop audio properties. Alright, it's picking up the noise now. Alright then. Let's try this.
Hello and welcome to this joint production between People's Dispatch and Pan-African Television. Today we are going to be talking about Ghana, a country which...
I just wanted to make sure that I have it in normal speed because I do a lot of videos in 1.25, so... Or, we probably could do 1.25, but we'll just do regular speed. Actually, let's read this section right here first. Kwesi Pratt Jr., I think that's Jr., General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana, talks about why the country's latest deal with the IMF will not solve its problems. He explains how Ghana's resources have not been used for the benefit of its people and the reasons for the debt crisis and inflation. Ghana is set to sign its 18th deal with the IMF. Kwesi Pratt Jr., General Secretary of the Social Movement of Ghana, spoke to People's Dispatch about how each time the country has gone to the IMF for help, its problems have only worsened. He talks about the different kinds of crises Ghana is facing and the alternatives presented by people's movements and the left for reaching a solution.
Hello and welcome to this joint production between People's Dispatch and Pan-African Television. Today we are going to be talking about Ghana, a country which has faced a severe economic crisis for many months now. Inflation has been sky high, prices have been rising, especially of essentials. In the meantime, the government has now, that is on the 13th of December, signed an agreement with the International Monetary Fund for a loan of $3 billion US. Of course, the deal has to be approved by the IMF's board in Washington, but this is Ghana's 18th deal with the IMF. And
I'll be honest, I don't know too much about Ghana, but I know there are some terrible situations going on in Ghana and support for the Ghana working class. So let's continue.
We do know that Ghana is not alone. A number of countries across the world caught in the IMF web, so to speak. Every country has its own unique situations, but many countries are also quite similar. So to talk more about this, we have with us a very special guest, Kwesi Pratt Jr., General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So first of all, my question is about this deal itself before we go into the deeper economic questions. How do you think Ghanaians are responding to the news of this deal? It has been in the works for a long time, a lot of discussion about it. What has been the response now that it's been finalized?
Well, nobody believes that this is the solution to the hydra-headed problems that confront the Ghanaian people. The president himself doesn't believe that there's an answer to the economic crisis. Nobody believes this. He himself has been talking about the need to fundamentally restructure the Ghanaian economy because he sees the problem as a structural problem. The opposition has insisted that this is no solution to the Ghanaian problem and so on. Now, what is happening is that something has to be done. They quite don't know what to be done, so anything must be done in order to deceive the people. And that's why they've come up.
If I don't talk much, it's because I do not know too much about the Ghana situation, so I'm just going to try to listen to learn more about the Ghanaian situation. Ghanaian, is that correct? I don't know. Once again, I haven't been very educated on Ghana. Being an American that's educated in the terrible history lessons that America does. Let me just fix camera here. All right, there we go. I'll sit back a little.
With this so-called deal, which is going to give us $3 billion over a 3-year period, and for which government has to implement a number of very, very harsh measures and so on. Now, for me, one of the things which is most significant is the fact that this is the 18th time that Ghana is going to the IMF. We've gone there 18 times, and every time we go there, the problems remain unsolved. In 1983,
it seems like the International Monetary Fund is absolutely useless. I know what they're doing with the Afghanian money. They're withholding the money that the United States took, or the IMF took from Afghanistan. They're withholding their own money from them, and the working class in Afghanistan and the poor in Afghanistan are really in desperation for food and things like that. So let's just continue with this.
We went to the IMF and the World Bank, and we reached a staff level agreement as we have reached today. Eventually, the board of the IMF and the World Bank approved, some arrangement for us, the structural adjustment program and so on. What was the effect? In less than 3 months, 300,000 workers lost their jobs. We had to privatize more than 400 state enterprises. In the end, cumulative...
Hold it. Take that back a little.
State enterprises. We had to privatize more than 400 state enterprises.
Privatization's not good, but we'll see why they had to privatize those state enterprises.
In the end, cumulatively, the Ghanaian cedi has been devalued by more than 30,000%. We privatized social services like health and education and so on.
Sounds like they're on the path that the United States is. Oh my, that's horrible. But it's because they don't have enough money in order to help their people.
Had clearly very disastrous consequences for people. That model has not changed. That is the new model.
Or maybe I'm misunderstanding, but privatization really is going to harm the working class in Ghana, from what I understand.
The neoliberal path to economic development always comes with more disaster, more hardship for the population, and we are not expecting anything new. Now, for us to reach this stage, government had to take a number of measures. One of the measures was to increase the value-added tax by 2.5% or thereabout. Government is insisting on what it calls a debt exchange program, which simply means that interest on government loans the government has taken from the private sector, from individuals and so on, would not be paid over a period of time, which is going to have devastating consequences on the pension schemes of workers in the public sector and so on. In addition to that, there's a freeze on public sector employment, which means that the unemployment problem is not going to get solved and so on. So people are generally very, very apprehensive. People know that this is not a solution. They know it's going to bring about more hardship, and it appears that sections of the society are mobilizing for mass action. The Trades Union Congress, for example, has threatened to embark upon industrial action. The Trades Union Congress of Ghana has a membership of about 500,000 workers. The Ghana Medical Association has threatened. Ghana Registered Nurses Association has threatened. Various teacher organizations are threatening. It appears that if care is not taken, this country will be grinding to a halt very soon.
Right. In this context, every time the IMF comes, the discussion about the IMF comes in various countries, the question everyone asks is, how do we get there? And we know that there's been a trajectory of policies. You mentioned part of that trajectory where earlier agreements with the IMF actually seem to have caused, it seems to have started off a process which has brought Ghana today. But one thing I believe you also, in one of our early interviews, you talked about, which is the fact that Ghana is a vast reserve of resources, some very valuable resource at this point of time. So often a question asked is that despite all these resources, how did the country end up in a situation like where it is today? So what would the answer be to that?
Well, now struggle for national independence.
Okay, now this is very interesting, and this is what I want to know. No, the noise for the desktop is all the way up. Can't change it, so.
We had three clear objectives. First of all, we wanted the opportunity to determine our political structure, our political future, and so on. And we also wanted an opportunity, therefore, to elect our own leaders. But in addition to that, we wanted to struggle, to break from the colonial yoke and so on, primarily because we wanted to own our own resources. And we wanted to exploit these resources for the benefit of our people. These objectives of the independence movement have not been achieved. So we have built a neo-colonial economy which still makes it impossible for us to own our resources, and which still makes it impossible for us to exploit these resources for our benefit. Now, you're looking at a country like Ghana with a population of about 30 million people, 31 million people. And the facts are that Ghana is the second largest producer of cocoa in the world, the whole world. Ghana is the sixth largest producer of gold in the whole world, and recently Ghana became the largest producer of gold in Africa. Ghana has bauxite, iron, it has oil, it has gas, it has vast amounts of water resources with rivers crisscrossing.
I don't know too much about America's colonialism in Africa, or I know they have been colonizing Africa. I meant Ghana specifically. But it sounds like, based on all the resources in Ghana, a lot of this problem could stem from United States interference. So I don't know for certain. Once again, I don't know too much about colonialism in Ghana.
In the country and emptying into the Atlantic Ocean. We are bordered on the south, actually, by the Atlantic Ocean. It does not make any sense that a country with this enormous amount of resources is not able to feed itself. A country which exists in the tropics, which actually lies on the equator, is not able to feed itself. It simply doesn't make sense, And it doesn't make sense when we are told that gold resources can be used, to back up the national currency. Russia has used it effectively over the last couple of months and so on. And yet our currency is one of the worst performing currencies in the world. I mean, all of this doesn't simply make sense. What is happening is that all of these resources that we have are currently not owned by the people of Ghana, and they are certainly not being exploited for the benefit of the people of Ghana. And one of the areas we can look at is gold. I mean, if you look at the gold industry in Ghana, you would marvel. First of all, we are giving huge tax holidays to gold mining companies. I mean, recently, Dr. Samdona, who was the first chief executive of Anglo Gold Ashanti, actually told us that Ghana has no interest in the largest gold mine in the country, one of the biggest gold mines in Africa, Anglo Gold Ashanti. We have no interest at all, you understand? And we have also signed very ridiculous agreements with some of these mining companies. And one of the most ridiculous agreements you sign with the mining companies is what they call the Foreign Exchange Retention Agreement. Now, under this agreement, mining companies are free to retain sometimes up to 98% of the value of gold exported from Ghana outside the Ghanaian economy. Why would we not run into this kind of trouble? We certainly will be running into this kind of trouble if...
I'm going to speed it up a little here because this is going to be a long video, because the video we're watching is 22 minutes. I've been recording for 14, so I'm going to speed it up a little.
we do not take measures to own these resources and to exploit these resources for our own benefit. Now, again, I think it's important for us to understand in clear terms that the primary objective of private capital is to double itself. The primary objective of private capital is to make more profit.
Right.
Private capital is not interested in...
Yes, so they're going to price gouge their consumers. So, but what I'm trying to understand is what has led to the privatization of industry in Ghana?
in improving nutrition. It only improves nutrition or contributes to improving nutrition if that would increase its capacity to make profit. Private capital is not interested in improving the standard of education if it is not going to contribute to maximizing profit and so on. So the profit motive itself is a disincentive to the mobilization of our people to resolve the concrete problems that confront us. And I think that's important for us to begin to move away from this capitalist mode of development, to move away from this neo-liberal agenda, which increasingly continues to impoverish our people.
Absolutely. In this context, also just quickly wanted to ask you about debt, because that seems to be one of the factors which is cited in many reports as a crucial problem that is affecting Ghana. So could it also tell me a bit about why the country seems to be in such massive levels of debt?
Well, the levels of debt are shocking. We also might to the extent that now we need to expend more than 100% of total national revenue on three line items: debt servicing, debt repayment, and public sector emoluments.
Right.
And these three items require about 120% of total national revenue. That's an impossibility, you understand? So the hole keeps getting deeper and deeper, and we are still digging, we are still acquiring more loans. Under this so-called agreement to the IMF, they're supposed to be giving us $3 billion over a period of 3 years, but it's not a gift. We have to pay for it, you understand? So we're just increasing the debt.
Right.
Huh?
Yeah, so they're doing it. I don't know if there's interest on it. I, once again, don't know too much about the IMF either. But basically kind of what the United States is doing in Ukraine. Once this war in Ukraine is over, Ukraine is going in terrible amounts of debt to the United States. So
Now, how come that the debt keeps growing? The debts keep growing because we are not engaged in any sensible production. We are not producing anything. We are importing toothpicks.
yeah, I'm guessing he's talking about he mentioned neoliberalism is a huge problem in Ghana, so I suppose that he's talking about importing of toothpicks as well. So I'm guessing they rely on foreign countries for their production. So kind of like the situation in the United States. Of course, I know Ghana has is in a very bad situation. And I'm not trying to lighten or whitewash this situation.
The elite in our society no longer drink Ghanaian water. They import Ghanaian water. We are importing our clothes. We are importing vehicles. We are virtually importing everything that our people depend on. That's not production. Okay? So the pressure on the local currency increases all the time because you need more dollars to bring in biscuits. You need dollars to bring in soft drinks. You need dollars to bring in second.
Okay, from what he's saying, the problem in Ghana is neoliberalism, where they outsource their jobs to foreign countries and rely on foreign countries for resources. So, yeah, just trying to understand.
Hand clothing and so on. There's massive pressure on the city. And we are not producing anything because, so anytime the city goes under pressure, we borrow in order to strengthen the city. You understand? Anytime we need more rice, we borrow to produce rice. And rice production is one interesting area. This country, all the 16 regions of Ghana have tremendous potential for producing rice. You understand? And the nutritionists even tell us that locally produced rice is far more nutritious than imported polished rice. Right. And yet, we are spending billions of dollars per annum bringing in rice. Simply doesn't make sense when there are favorable conditions in the country for the cultivation of rice. You know, and it goes with all others. I mean, we are in the tropics, okay? The rainfall pattern is good. We are okay. Do you know that we are the third largest importer of tomato paste from Germany? When we have better conditions in our country for the cultivation of tomatoes than Germany. Hmm? Guinea fowls, which is a Ghanaian delicacy. I mean, it's a fowl which has very little fat, and so on. Ghana has now become dependent on Denmark for the importation of guinea fowls. You understand? We are importing eggs. We are importing tomatoes from semi-arid lands and so on. Simply doesn't make sense. We built the Akosovo hydroelectric project.
Yeah, so they have to rely on their food from foreign countries. So if they want food, they can't just grow their own food and sell it. They got to rely on to buy it off of other countries. So
Project in the early 1960s and created the largest man-made lake in the world. Okay, the Volta River flows all the way from Burkina Faso through all parts of Ghana, creates the largest man-made lake in the middle, and pours into the Atlantic Ocean. And we are importers of fish. We are bordered on the south by the Atlantic Ocean, and we are importing fish. Simply doesn't make sense. This country needs to begin to think about how to utilize the many resources it has to address the concrete problems of its people, and thereby limit its dependence, especially on the dollar and foreign currency, in order to solve its problems of food, its problems of access to housing, and so on. You understand? Now, if you look at the rate at which prices are escalating, it is completely crazy. I mean, within the last 6 months, the price of petroleum products have more than doubled. Okay? The staple that is eaten by the Accra people, the kinky, used to sell for 1 cedi a ball. Within the last 12 months, it is now selling for 5 cedis a ball. It's increased 500%. How can the people cope with this crisis? And then we are told sometimes that, look, we needn't worry. It's a worldwide.
the inflation problem stems from the outsourcing of production to other countries. So that is why they're having these problems in Ghana. So I understand now.
Phenomena. Everybody is suffering
Ukraine
the
war
same.
that's causing it, yes.
Everybody is facing the same problem.
Right.
If everybody is facing the same problem, it simply means that we are all doing the wrong thing. The fact that everybody is facing the same problem doesn't make what is happening in Ghana right.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we are told that the problem is caused by the Russia-Ukraine war. Can you believe that Ukraine, where the bombs are falling, its currency is doing better than the Ghanaian currency? So that's a useless excuse. They should stop telling us about the Ukraine-Russian war and so on, because in Ukraine, which is receiving the bombs, is doing much better than we are doing. It simply doesn't make sense. And then we are told that COVID-19 is also responsible for the current crisis and so on. Is COVID-19 the reason why we have signed the foreign exchange retention agreements with the mining companies? Certainly not. COVID-19 is not the reason why our interest in our own mining operations is zero. COVID-19 is not the reason why we are dependent on Germany, for our tomato needs. COVID-19 is not the reason why we are not using the Akosovo Dam to farm fish. COVID-19 is not the reason why we are not getting maximum benefits out of the cocoa industry, the second largest producer of cocoa. And look at the poverty around us. COVID-19 simply cannot explain this condition.
Right. So finally, of course, a question I ask almost every guest who comes on our show is basically that you analyze the problems that lead to it. One interesting aspect about many countries which are in a similar situation is that both the ruling party and the opposition seem to be in almost a bankruptcy or a crisis of alternatives, because both of them, of course, criticize each other, but finally they both end up going to the IMF for perpetuating the same policies. So from the perspective of the left in Ghana, from the perspective of many of the movements you were talking about earlier who have been raising slogans, who have been sort of expressing their opposition, what might be some of the concrete steps that might help alleviate this crisis at this point of time?
You're right. I mean, all the governments have gone to the IMF and the World Bank, and at any given time, the opposition has said no to IMF and World Bank. As soon as they come to power, they've cleared the path towards the boardrooms of the IMF and the World Bank. Indeed, the current government in Ghana said that it was unpatriotic to go to the International Monetary Fund. In fact, they actually said that you'd be reckless to go to the International Monetary Fund and so on. Now they're in power, they're also headed to the IMF and so on. So there's a certain level of insincerity when it comes to these parties which alternate, in government and so on. Now, clearly, these governments do not appear to have any answer to the problems that confront our people.
Right.
They've been doing this for 60 years. This is the 18th time you're going to the IMF. And the popular saying by Einstein.
I was thinking of that.
The popular saying by Einstein, that if you keep up doing the same thing all the time and you're expecting different results, you need to have your head examined. Now, we've been doing the same things for 60 years and we're expecting different results,
right,
which ain't going to happen. You understand? So we need to think anew. And if we need to think anew, the formula we have to adopt is to find out what we have. Mm-hmm. How to maximize, income, how to maximize the benefits of what we have in order to address the concrete problem that faces the Ghanaian people. How to make sure the Ghanaian people have food on the table, how to make sure that access to education improves, how to make sure that when our people fall sick, they get treatment. So this is how we have to approach the economy. The economy is not about figures. It's not about the gross domestic product. It's not about per capita income. It's not about debt to GDP ratio and so on. Right. The economy ought to be concretely about the lives of our people, how to improve the lives of our people. And if the economy is doing well, citizens must feel it. The contentment of citizens must be the measuring rod when it comes to looking at the national economy. And I am convinced that these bourgeois political parties and so on have no solutions at all. And I'm happy that general mobilization in Ghana appear to be getting a boost. Organized labor is mobilizing. All kinds of fronts are mobilizing. I think it's time for the left.
Well, once the working class gets fed up enough and the economic conditions are extreme and are hurting the working class, and like Ghana, there is high unemployment. A lot of the working class is not employed, according to what he said. So yeah, that's exactly why protests are rising, and people can figure it out eventually once the economic, inflation, once inflation gets to a certain point, people are going to be fed up. And talking about the United States as well, but focusing on Ghana because this is an important situation as well. So once the people get fed up, then there will be protests and potentially a revolution. And apparently the police are arresting the people for protesting. I don't know how free of a country Ghana is, but that's not good. People should have the right to protest. Let's continue.
Movements in Ghana to clearly identify with all of these movements which are agitating for a better and new option to economic development, and to participate in the struggles until we get to the point where we shall begin to look for indigenous solutions to our problems, not solutions which end up increasing the wallets, of those who sit in the boardrooms of the multinational corporations in the colonial metropolis. Absolutely. And I think it's possible. I think ultimately we shall emerge victorious in this battle against underdevelopment and neo-liberalism.
Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you.
So there we have it, a tough couple of months and even years maybe ahead for the people of Ghana. And many other countries, like I said earlier, facing a very similar situation as well. The ruling class might tell all of us that there really is no option. The IMF is the only way to go. These policies are the only options to solve the crisis to some extent. But I think the question...
And another thing on that, money is a social construct. It was made by society. To think that we're in these massive amount of debts in these countries, the United States as well, think of it this way. The money was made up, so...
We all need to ask perhaps, is that really the case? Are there other alternatives that might go a much farther way, that might be much better to actually solve some of these crises that we in many countries face? That's all we have time for today from People's Dispatch and PATV. See you next time.
That outro is really loud. But that concludes this video. That's from the People's Dispatch. Make sure you go check them out and subscribe. I think they're pretty good news. They point out colonialism and problems of capitalism. They give a voice to those in countries that a lot of Americans don't know too much about, myself included. But they give a voice to people that are actually affected by this, the working class, people from the working class. So make sure you check them out. That's going to conclude this video. We've got more coming up. We will be having more coming up. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Peace out. This has been the Socialist Report.